Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SavvyCast. This is Jamie, and I'm so glad that you're here today, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. Today's episode is going to be jam-packed with information that I know every woman is going to want to avail herself of. I'm excited about this episode. We are going to be talking with two very, very knowledgeable people that I'm about to introduce, but we're going to be talking about hormones generally and compounded hormones specifically. And those of you who are midlife, as I am, this is something that I think can be life-changing. So I would like to welcome to the SavvyCast, Lizzie Harbin and Sara Hoover. Lizzie and Sara, thank you both for being here today.
Thank you, Jamie. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you. Excited.
Okay, and I just have to, now, I always ask, I don't know if y'all knew this, but I always ask as an icebreaker question, what you would choose as your last meal. So that may have caught you off guard, but whoever wants to go first.
My last meal would I'm Cajun. My maiden name is LeBlanc. And so I would definitely have to have a crawfish étouffée and probably some boudin.
Oh my goodness. I love that. My husband's business partner, Dwayne Donner, he is Cajun. So I'm very familiar with both of those. He was actually on the podcast and he talked about all the Cajun things. So, okay, Lizzie, what about you?
Wow. Well, when Sara went Cajun, I love a good gumbo, but I am Texan at heart. So I've got to go with some great Tex-Mex, and it's going to be tacos for sure.
Yeah, I would go out with Tex-Mex as well. So, oh my goodness. Okay. Well, what I would like for you all to do, well, first of all, I want to let everyone know how I even found out about both of you. Zane came home from a Vistage. It's I don't even know. How would you describe Vistage? He speaks at Vistages. It's a business leader.
Yeah, it's the world's largest CEO organization. And so I'm in a key executive group, and he was our speaker.
Okay. Well, he came back saying, Jamie, you have got to meet Lizzie. She is amazing. You would be intrigued by what she does. So anyway, I quickly connected with you because this is going to be helpful to so many people. So Lizzie and Sara, would y'all just introduce yourselves, explain what you do and your relation to compounded hormones?
Sure. So this is Lizzie, and I have been in our industry about 20 years. I used to work at our trade association, and I work with PCAA now. Sarah's my colleague. We help doctors and pharmacists create personalized medicine to make a difference in a patient's life. And we do that by providing products, education, and support. I am one of the vice presidents or officers of our company, and I work with every team from advocacy. We do a lot of federal advocacy work to make sure that patients can have compounds from their pharmacy of choice. We run an education company to make sure that doctors and pharmacists know what they can do for their patients. And then I also work with corporate communications and our human relations team. And I live here in Birmingham. Our company's in Texas because I married one of our customers. So my husband's one of the owners of Wellness Pharmacy here in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. I became a native of Birmingham, or a resident of Birmingham during the pandemic full time, and absolutely love it and love living here. And then I have two grown children. Jackson, Chicago, just graduated college, and Jillian is in Denver. So now I'm a dog mom here in Birmingham. Got two dogs here at the house.
That's wonderful. And you're not far from me. So we need to get our dogs together, and then you and I can chat while they play.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, Sara.
Hi, so Sara Hoover. I'm a pharmacist. I actually found compounding before I went to pharmacy school and fell in love with the idea of always getting to be able to use my brain and figure things out and problem solve. And so after I graduated, I worked for a compounder for a few years and then opened up my own compounding only pharmacy, focusing on women's health. That just became a passion of mine. Being in a pharmacy that was hybrid, I could see the difference between the ladies that were on traditional hormone replacement and those that were on compounded, and nutrition and all the other aspects. So I kind of dove into that, and that became my practice. As my kids were getting a little bit older, I wanted a little bit more time. So I was able to merge with a bigger pharmacy, and that freed me up a little bit to have more family time. And then opportunity came to come work at PCCA and the clinical team, and I love it. I love helping members. I feel like everything I've learned along the way is just prepared me to help other members. And so in January, I became manager of clinical services team. So I have a team of 12 that I manage, and it's a fabulous team. We have so much experience. It's unbelievable the number of years of experience that we have on our team that we're able to help other members. But yeah, I do have 3 children. So my oldest just started PT school in Lubbock.
Oh.
My middle one leaves Friday. I will move her into her dorm in San Antonio at St. Mary's this weekend. And then my son is going to be an only child at home. He is 14. He's starting high school. I'm not sure he's excited about being an only child because no one to blame anything else on. It's
that's
be
right.
him. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. So this is amazing because we have a very experienced compounding pharmacist on hand. And then we've got, now let me, PCCA, let me define or give the acronym, Professional Compounding Centers of America. So that is what you, Lizzie, are over the marketing and the education and the human resources. And then as one of the pharmacists, you also, Sara, help coordinate in different states and all. I mean, because this is a network, correct?
Yeah,
it's an umbrella.
Right. So we support about 4,000 pharmacies worldwide, about 3,000 here in the United States. So Sara's team not only is really the faculty for our education company, they are taking calls from all over the US and Canada, helping pharmacists every day from, here's this unique patient, we've tried this, can you help me, develop or think of a formula or what could work for this patient, to, hey, this compound, I'm just having trouble, putting this together. So it could be a very technical question, a very academic question, and there are literally hundreds of calls a day that they take from all over the country.
And sometimes they don't have time to do the research. They're in the pharmacy, just everything is so busy. And so we're able to I like to say we're their phone a friend, so we're able to step back and do some of that research so that we can help them help their patient, because ultimately there's always a patient at the end of our call.
Okay. Now, do you all take calls and work directly with the public, or do you strictly work with the professionals?
Just with the member pharmacies. Yeah.
Okay. But you can connect individuals, people who might be watching or listening, you can connect them, which I will include all the links in the show notes to how anyone can find a compounding pharmacy near them. And what else are y'all able to provide as far as resources to those who are going to want to know more?
Oh my goodness, we've got so many resources. We can help determine how someone can find a pharmacy. We've got different articles about hormones we're going to link to. Okay. We're going to talk about the threat to compounded hormones that's going on currently in the United States. And for your listeners who are currently on hormones, how they can go tell their story and help save their right to have hormone therapy. And everyone where someone's listening and they're like, my gosh, I think this might be for me, how they can get started. So we're gonna have a lot of resources for people.
Everyone be sure to go to the show notes page. Everything will be there, everything. So you can listen while you're driving. Don't worry about writing anything down. Okay, so let's just start. I personally am on compounded hormones, and I cannot imagine life without them. I've been on them for over a decade. But some people may have no clue. Maybe their doctor or physician has never mentioned it to them. Can you address how hormones can help women specifically?
Yeah, so it's really all about balance. It's making sure that we're balancing our estrogen, our progesterone, our testosterone. as we start to go through the change, we have the physical symptoms of not having a menstrual cycle. That's a signal that things are starting to change with your hormones. But hormones can start to change prior to that, and sometimes we just need a little help with progesterone. We're making plenty of estrogen, but as our hormones are depleted, we really, my personal opinion is we need to replenish them. Our brain needs hormones to function, just overall health. We just recently published a study talking about analyzing all of the data that's out there on safety and efficacy, and just because that needed to be out there, that information needed to be out there. But it's all about balancing the hormones. And some doctors will just listen to symptoms, some doctors will just look at labs. It's really marrying the two. We really have to be looking at both. You have to be paying attention to what's going on in your body. I like people to journal so that we can really look back at how things are going, but it's about balance.
And as we get older, and especially near menopause, imbalance is going to happen. So it's how you choose to correct it, or if you choose to correct it. Is that accurate?
It is. And some ladies get nervous about, oh, well, I don't want to gain weight, or I'm worried about cancer. They're worried about if they take hormones, these things that might happen. I used to tell my patients that doing nothing isn't necessarily going to keep you safe. Doing nothing isn't going to keep you from gaining weight. It's all about finding that right balance. So, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, they just kind of pushed through it, but lives were different then. Stress was different then. Our adrenal glands were meant to pick up when our ovaries stopped working, but the stress that we're under, the 24/7 go, our adrenals they're not ready. They can't take over when our ovaries, take it and say their last hurrah. So it's all about, I think everyone needs to be looking at their hormones and making sure that they're balanced.
I want to jump over to Lizzie and to hear your story, Lizzie. But first, I want to just, when I look at this discussion of hormones and all that's involved, just from my vantage point, and then every person is different. As women, we have an annual with a physical with our OBGYN, and then maybe our primary doctor, internal. I don't know many, and I love all my doctors, but there's not a whole lot of time or thought or discussion about any of this. And I've been on my compounded hormones, and I guess they would change based on labs, but would you all agree that anyone who's really wanting to avail themselves of this is going to have to educate themselves before they go to see their physician? Because it's not just going to magically happen with most physicians.
Correct. And that's where I kind of fit into a lot of my physicians' practices. I was that voice for them. I helped with their patients, kind of fielded a lot of their questions, because there's a lot of hand holding that goes on with all these changes that are happening. And I mean, it's more than just hot flashes. For me, it's people's personalities change, like it disrupts families. It's if you're not sleeping, there's so many things that can be just detrimental to the entire family, that I kind of stepped in, and those doctors that didn't have time, they relied on me to kind of hold those hands along the way and then help with them guidance.
And Jamie, I liken it to like we all raise children on the three of us, and I'm sure many of the listeners, and you almost feel like being a mom, you become a pseudo pediatrician, right? Because you became such an advocate for your child. You learned so much about what was going on with them, what they're taking, how often they see the doctor when they're young. You almost need to turn that spotlight on yourself and become your own self-advocate. Be very aware of your body, be aware of what's going on. If you don't like what the doctor is telling you, or you feel like you're not being listened to, or, maybe there's something that they're wanting you to take and you're not comfortable taking it, know that, and speak up for yourself, and be willing to find those resources. I think hormone therapy and compounding is one of those specific areas where we have a huge patient advocate group, and yes, very knowledgeable, educated patients. And I find in my own personal care with my doctor, it's a dialogue, and we're talking about something, and I'm like, well, but I've heard this, or what if this could do this? And then based on my feedback, she might tweak what she was originally planning on doing. So I definitely feel heard and like I am a partner in my own care with the doctor and the pharmacy. And we call that really the patient triad. So
wow, that's so important.
Yeah. I usually tell new practitioners, whether pharmacists or providers, listen to your patients, because you are going to learn more from a patient than you are ever in a book. And some of the things that kind of seem weird, you're like, I've never heard that, never read that anywhere. File it away, because it'll circle back around, and there'll be another patient be like, that's what we did. So listening is key, and that's what women want. I mean, I've read some articles that talk about why women want bioidentical hormones, why they want compounded, because they want that customized care. They don't want a cookie cutter, here's what's in the box. They want that individualized care, and they want someone to listen.
Well, what I want to do right now is, and I know, for instance, on Instagram, I will see even some of my friends, y'all, what hormones are y'all taking for menopause? I'm having this or that. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, everyone's different. You can't poll people on that. You can poll, do you love your marble, or would you do it again, but not hormones? So that is why I'm so glad y'all are here to give clarity and direction for every person watching or listening, because they're going to need to get with their own physician about their particular situation. So, Lizzie, just tell us your story, because you have been a hormone patient for over 7 years. So you have not only the knowledge that you have in your professional life with this, but you have personal experience. So can you share your story?
Yes. And I want to preface with, I am not a clinician. I was a communications major. I'm a connector type person, but definitely through sitting in the back of the room, through many hormone conferences, and my own story. So yeah, I thought I knew a lot, thought this was something, oh gosh, that will never be me. And then, got into my mid 40s. And as Sara talked about stress today, I definitely have a level A stress job, was raising teenagers. I was working in Texas, and then, met and ended up marrying a man in Birmingham, and was flying back and forth every week pre-pandemic, and just had a lot going on. And so slowly was noticing things like having trouble focusing in meetings, couldn't sleep, and sleep disruption creates a whole new cascade of events. As Sara said, sometimes doing nothing is not the safest route, focus, sleep, and energy. And I'd always been a very energetic person. And I was watching some of my friends go through this, and some people are resigned and say, oh, well, we're getting older. We can't do it. We can't do like we used to do. And I'm like, no, this is something different. So because I was in the industry and I knew people, did my first set of lab work, which I think Sara said, it's the symptoms the person's experiencing and the labs. And I would say, if anyone's choosing a doctor, make sure that doctor is measuring levels, because every patient is different. And like you said, Jamie, what works for me won't work for you, won't work for Sara. So initially the lab showed that my estrogen was elevated and my progesterone was low. Well, this is bad, because high estrogen, that can put you at risk for cancer. And the answer was to start taking progesterone to get the balance back. So when I did that, instantly it helped with sleep. And I was still cycling, so I did it days 14 to 25. I needed a dose that was not commercially available, which is why compounding was an optimal choice for me. Sleep, the gift of sleep came again, and that was really wonderful. And then I think with progesterone, I just say it's like sort of a calming, if you're having the mood swings, it helps with that. And then we added very quickly 7-keto DHEA. And the 7-keto is really important, because as my doctor explained to me, we can just do DHEA, but the 7-keto is going to prevent you from gaining weight and getting acne. Two things a middle-aged woman does not want.
Wow. Okay, so let me clarify. DHEA alone could cause the acne and the weight gain, but
I guess it could have in me based on my labs. I'll let Sara talk more about that.
DHEA can be converted into testosterone or estrogen depending on what your body needs, but we can't really control it. The 7-keto, the thought behind that is that it stays as DHEA, so it's not shifting to those other hormones.
Okay. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So that was going to help with just like sense of well-being, my memory, You know,
Mhm.
people, I'm having a senior moment. I mean, we don't have to have senior moments. I think we can keep cognition sharp and also bone density. So those things were all very helpful. And then at the time, you know, I'm testing maybe biannually or annually. We might tweak as needed. Sometimes no tweak was needed. But then recently I turned 50. And so more changes happen right at 50. And I just started on testosterone about 2 months ago, and it's been a real gift. It took about a month for me to notice the difference. But my doctor had even said, "Oh my goodness, are you having fatigue, especially in the middle of the day?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And all of a sudden I realized I'd been so stressed and busy, I'd become unaware of my body. And then I started to pay attention to myself, and I'm like, yes, I am having this low energy, and I am starting to have some focus issues again. So I'm taking a very micro dose topically, and it has really helped with energy and focus, especially. And I'm starting to feel like myself again, which is great. Now, I've recently learned only, you know, like you said, oh, everybody wants to know about testosterone. Only about 25% of women lose their testosterone as they age. So this
Oh.
is why labs are super important. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh my gosh, Lizzie, I'm having trouble focusing and I'm having this afternoon fatigue, that could be the answer. It's probably, and if your lab shows you don't need it, it could be something else. And working with the right doctor, you could figure out what that something else is.
Okay, working with the right doctor. Are the labs that you're speaking of blood work, saliva, both?
I would say both. You know, with what your body is producing, you can look at the serum, the blood work, to see kind of what's going on, just, you know, endogenously in your body. But once we start on topical, it really is best to follow with saliva. It's hard to really capture your levels when you're applying it topically in the serum. It's just so fast. It's absorbed and it's goes where it needs to go. The saliva is kind of an endpoint of where some hormones land. And so I think for topical, it is best with saliva.
And I've just learned, Sarah, that with, I guess, estrogen metabolites is also a urine test, correct?
Correct. So to see how you are processing the hormones, which is critical. You look at the urine metabolites, and so I always tell patients that we're blessed that we have these different mechanisms to test. We have serum, we have saliva, we have urine to really look at the full picture. And there are some doctors that are monitoring doses based on urine. I'm still not 100% there yet, but I think definitely looking to see, especially if we have a family history of cancer of some sort, seeing if you're a poor methylator, seeing how well you're breaking down those hormones is key. It's critical. And back on that, I mean, making sure their bowels are moving. That's kind of the first thing. Bowel health, gut health is so important for hormones.
Okay, and I'm asking for myself as well. I love my doctor, but he's not going to do all of this. Can your doctor, if you are one like I am, and probably many listening or watching, okay, I want to take all the tests. I want to get a full panel. I want to know if I'm deficient in anything, if I've got too much. Can your doctor defer you to a compounding pharmacy and all of that take place there?
So with the saliva test, it's since that's non-invasive, a patient could actually order the kits. A lot of compounding pharmacies carry the kits. The same thing with the urine testing. You do have to go through a provider for that. So it just really depends on your prescriber and relationships that they have.
I was also going to say, and again, if you're happy with your doctor, you know, could you supplement with another doctor? So the pharmacy could recommend, if they can't do the tests in the labs, you could say, here's what I'm looking for. Like, you know where the pharmacy is. Can you recommend a doctor that I can add to my healthcare team who will partner with me in this?
And that will be in all the resources that will be in the show notes, because wherever someone is, they can find it in the show notes where to go.
Yes.
Okay. Now I want to ask, okay, compounded medicine it's unique for each patient. Is that something that has it always been taught in pharmacy school, or is it more of a new concept in the last few years?
Or go ahead, Sarah.
No, go right ahead.
That's an interesting question. I mean, it's really the core competency of pharmacy. I mean, before we had the rise of pharma, you kind of had the apothecaries, and that's what they were really doing, was compounding. And then if you look at history, you get into the 1960s, et cetera, and you have the rise of the pharmaceutical companies. So we were established in 1981 and started with a cancer patient who needed a medication that they couldn't get. And the pharmacist locally in Houston was able to go to his college professor, get the formula or recipe written, source the ingredients, make that compound or that recipe, working in partnership with an oncologist at MD Anderson Cancer Center, and had a great patient outcome. And so what's important about that story is that's what compounding is today, serving a unique patient need, and really the doctor and the pharmacist working together. So this wasn't always taught in pharmacy school. As time has gone on, there's about 150 pharmacy schools at PCCA. We work with half of them, and we have memorandums of understanding with 12 of them. So all summer long, our training lab is full with students from all over the country at all the different pharmacy schools. So we teach a boot camp, and then some of them get elective credit. Those 12 schools get school credit for coming and taking our classes. And so they can do rotations, pharmacy rotation could be in a compounding pharmacy. And then really, if they choose, I think the things for a pharmacist, it's this professional fulfillment, and it's really this direct patient interaction. I mean, Sara can speak to that. It was a big part of her career. So I think that's how people choose compounding. And it's not taught in all schools, but then we will supplement in some schools. So Sara, did you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to just add about just women's health and women's hormones in general. I think there's been an evolution from the 60s when everyone was put on Premarin, and then they said, oh, we should maybe protect the uterus. So there's just been this evolution of women's health. And I think over the last, probably 20 years of my career, it's been more focused on individualizing it and working with those individual patients. But I still think we have a long way to go. I think that we have our compounders that are focused in on that, and we have some physicians I think it's going to grow because women are demanding it. Women want to be heard. They want that individualized therapy. But like Lizzie's point, we're going to have to stand up and fight for it. So
right. Yeah, it's about so compounding in general is 1 to 3% of the prescriptions written in the United States.
Wow.
And probably 40 to 50% of hormones are a big part of that space.
Does
insurance cover most compounded drugs?
It just really does depend on it depends on your plan,
Okay.
but, we're not most of the time, I'm not talking like thousands of dollars of, it's
Right.
reasonable, and most people's copays, usually the cost of your compound is what your, non-formulary copay would be anyway. I used to tell my patients, just plan ahead and use your flex spending, or, and you can work, there's different ways I would work with my patients to try to help them, if cost was a barrier. Sometimes we could combine some of their hormones to, we could maybe concentrate where they use less. I tried to work with my patients just to help make sure that they had access.
Okay. Well, what I want to do in the time remaining is go over some specific options that people have available through compounded hormones, if they need that particular hormone. And I do want to say that before we jumped on, I did ask you, Sara, and I would like for you to articulate this, because I do think there's some misunderstanding with certain things. Peptides, that's sort of a hot topic right now, a lot on social media. Injecting peptides. What is your take on that as a compounding pharmacist?
It falls outside the realm of what we're able to do legally as a compounder. It just doesn't meet all the requirements. There were some changes that happened, some regulations that happened in 2013, and and I think for the most part good that we were able to make sure patients are safe, but because of those regulations, we were not able to compound peptides. And personally, I feel like there's more data. I think we need more research. I don't feel comfortable with what is the data that's out there that's available that I would feel comfortable recommending it to a patient.
And we're talking about injecting the peptides, not peptides in skincare, because you did say those are
Yeah.
great. Those are
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Just helps to replenish the skin. And I mean, peptides cosmetically are great.
Okay. Now, human growth hormone, I don't know that many watching or listening would be at all interested in that, but I've heard of people taking that, calling it the fountain of youth, HGH, but you said it is not the fountain of youth. And what is your take on human growth hormone?
It doesn't come without a cost. Whenever we're overriding what the body's supposed to be doing, if too much growth hormone, you're gonna skyrocket your blood sugar, and that could be a problem. I think it's applicable for someone that is elderly, that's maybe debilitated, can kind of boost them back up to help them get their strength back. I think that's great. But for those of us, that are right here, me, you, and Lizzie, it's not something that I would recommend. I think we need to balance hormones. We have to look at sleep. We have to, look at the full picture. Nothing is a magic pill. And I think a lot of people try to use HGH as the magic pill. But like I said, there's a cost that comes with that.
Okay. Okay. Now you told me about something I did not know about, and I'm going to see if I can get this, because oxytocin, I didn't know you could get oxytocin outside of breastfeeding. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so you had asked me what was something new that people maybe didn't know about other than balancing hormones. I think it's a fabulous. It's also it's a peptide of sort, but it's a hormone that our body normally produces. People think about it, the Pitocin shot that people use to stimulate labor. Oxytocin is also what's released whenever we are breastfeeding our babies. It's what lets the milk down. It is, if you've ever breastfed a baby, you just know that calming feeling that happens. The whole world could crash around you and you don't really care, because partly you're holding that sweet baby, but the other is that oxytocin has such a calming effect. Oxytocin kind of balances cortisol. And so when we're like super stressed, sometimes our body can't keep up with the amount of oxytocin that it needs to produce. So it's great for stress. It's great for PTSD. There have been some interesting studies coming about pain, that it helps with pain, migraines. It is a fascinating drug. Because it is a peptide, it doesn't make it past the stomach. So either sublingually, my preference is intranasally. And also can be used vaginally, can help when someone can't use estrogen. It could help replenish the vaginal tissue for vaginal dryness and atrophy. So it's a fabulous hormone.
So if you were using it for vaginal dryness, or that you would use like a suppository or an insert?
It would probably be a cream or a gel. It doesn't hold up to heat very well, so we wouldn't want to put it in a suppository base.
Okay. And then you said nasally and sub-Q, that means an injection?
No, sublingually, underneath the tongue.
Sublingually, under the tongue. So no injections, just
no injections. Yeah.
Okay. So how would someone get oxytocin? I needed it yesterday. I know I need it. I know I will qualify for oxytocin.
They would need to talk to their compounding pharmacy.
Okay. Now, is that something that you can, or do you have to have a doctor's prescription for that?
Correct. You do.
Okay. And that would probably be your OBGYN. If you're a woman, that would be the one most likely to.
Yeah, they would probably need to understand the other uses, because a traditional OBGYN probably is just going to be thinking about the traditional uses that they use it to stimulate labor. So it would have to be someone that kind of is thinking outside the box.
Is oxytocin the same as Pitocin?
Pitocin is the brand name of oxytocin that they give.
Okay. Yeah. Did not know that.
And there used to be a nasal spray available commercially, but there were people that were using it at home to stimulate their labor, and there were some problems that needs to happen in the hospital setting. So there's no longer commercially a nasal spray formula, but a compounder can make it for these uses.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So tell us, speak to some of the most widely needed and helpful compounded hormones that people may want to ask their doctors about.
Yeah. So I like a combination of the two estrogens. So our body actually makes three estrogens. It makes estriol, estradiol, and estrone. With menopause, women make plenty of estrone. We make it from our adipose tissue or our fat tissue. And so I usually don't recommend estrone, but I like a combination of estriol and estradiol. Most people are familiar with estradiol. That's what most of the commercial products are. Estriol is what a milder hormone, but it really does kind of balance out that estradiol. So I like combination of those. Most women need progesterone, even if you've had your uterus removed. Doctors will say after a hysterectomy, oh, you don't need progesterone because it only protects the uterus. And my perspective, that's very narrow thinking, because there are progesterone receptors all throughout the body. There's a large portion in the uterus, but that's not its only function. And that's the beauty of our body, is there's never just one way that we do things. So even if you've had a hysterectomy, I still believe you need progesterone. And then, like Lizzie was saying, the testosterone, it really just depends. It depends on what your numbers are. And I know we talked offline before about libido, that gets to be a big question that women have, and everyone thinks, oh, I have low libido, it must be I need testosterone. And that's not necessarily the case. Estrogen is super important for libido. If you think about when we cycle, our estrogen peaks right before ovulation. We're meant to procreate. That's what our body's function is. And so estrogen peaks right before we ovulate, which means that's when our highest drive is with the estrogen. And you think about too, if you have vaginal dryness, atrophy, libido is not something you're thinking about, because that's a painful situation. So estrogen, and then also thyroid. Thyroid's huge for libido. If you have low thyroid, you're definitely going to have lower desire. So it's more than just, putting one hormone in one bucket and this is what it does. It's really looking at the whole, orchestra, the whole cascade of all of the hormones and how they intertwine and work together.
Wow. Okay. That's very interesting. I have a low thyroid. I did not know that played into the dance as well. And I do know, because I did a previous podcast with an OBGYN, and we had questions submitted, and a lot of women wanted to know about just vaginal dryness and just pain during intercourse. And I guess that's the atrophy that you're speaking of. And you say there are lots of options other than maybe what a doctor would typically prescribe.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just that thinning of the tissue. I mean, you think about any time a tissue gets thin and it's dry, there's friction, there's going to be some minor tears. It's going to be painful if that tissue isn't kind of plump and healthy like it should be. So oxytocin is great. If for some reason you can't use hormones, or you're, worried about using hormones, you could use oxytocin. I just recently was doing some research for our next seminar, and I ran across this zinc product. That zinc was helpful for vaginal dryness. So we're creating a formulation right now, and I'm going to present in a few weeks to our members about the research of that. So there are other options. It's just, trying to replenish that tissue is what's most important.
But it can be done. It can
be done.
Oh,
Absolutely.
that's great news. That is wonderful news. Okay. Now, what about some of the others? And I know a lot of people are going to ask about the fight with weight that we all, the older we get, the harder it is, especially the middle. Anything in that area, compounding could help.
It's just getting the hormones balanced.
Okay.
Is key. Another thing that a lot of our members compound is low dose naltrexone, which is a whole nother topic we could spend probably a couple of hours on.
Okay, now I've heard of that, and I'm trying to remember where, but
well, it helps with inflammation. And so a lot of times when we're inflamed, we're going to hold on to fluid, we're going to hold on to weight. And so low dose naltrexone can help with the inflammation. It can also help if there's any autoimmune disorders going on. It helps balance that, but also can help with satiety. So just that feeling of that full feeling, so we know when to stop eating. It can help with that as well. So yeah, there's some members doing some interesting things with some naltrexone and maybe some appetite suppressants, and tapering up on one and tapering down on the other, and eventually getting them just on the naltrexone. So there's some things that we can do. But really, hormones and the gut health are in sleep. If we can get those things right, exercising, no one wants to hear that, but it's critical for making sure we're moving. Again, there's no magic bullet. I wish there was. I would be sitting on an island with a little umbrella in my drink if there was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Right.
what about sleep? Because that is such an issue for so many. What is something that typically what compounded formulation is often used for those who struggle with sleep?
Yeah, so for ladies, when their hormones are out of balance, Lizzie was talking about the progesterone, oral progesterone. When you take it, some of the metabolites, as it's broken down, those metabolites are helpful for sleep. They're helpful for anxiety and depression. So that's one thing. Some people are low in melatonin, and so you can actually have that tested to see what your melatonin levels are. Not everyone is low, but some people are. Sometimes it's just like poor, sleep habits. You go from this bright room, lay down, and then you're expected to go to sleep. Stress, if you're not managing your stress, it's better to kind of take like a supplement called theanine throughout the day so that you can kind of modulate that stress instead of being all hyped up all day long and then trying to relax and go to sleep. So good habits, not being on a phone, not having the TV on, dimming lights. And I usually tell people too, if they're, like me and like thinking about the 500,000 things I'm going to be doing the next day, is to have a little notebook by your bedside, write it down. And so then there's something about like releasing that from your brain that your brain can be like, okay, it's taken care of. I don't have to worry about it right now at 2 a.m. I'll take care of it tomorrow.
Then when you go to your physician, you have it documented. You don't have to remember it. And it's going to be a clear picture of your symptoms to go with your blood work or your saliva test. Okay.
Correct.
And I didn't know you could take theanine during the day. I know that's combined with a lot of melatonin or some, it'll be a supplement. Okay. Anything else that you just want to toss out before? And then I do want you all to tell Lizzie, I want you to tell everyone how they can help prevent the government taking away our ability. Yeah, I definitely want to. I believe no better time than now to be advocates for our own health. But is there anything else, Sara, that you might want to hit that, the female hormones? I think everyone understands that. Is there anything else that might be available that somebody might want to look into that's compounded?
Yeah, so just the overall, so adrenals, thyroid, female hormones, it's all together, and we can't just isolate them. We have to make sure we're looking at the big picture. But I think what Lizzie has to talk about is most important. So I'll turn it over to her.
Yeah. Okay. And my closing words would be, my jaw dropped when my doctor told me that menopause was a 30-year process.
Oh.
Perimenopause is 10 years, menopause is 10 years, and postmenopause is 10 years. And it's truly a journey. And I think Sara hit the nail on the head of just, keeping up with it and having the right healthcare team to maintain that balance. The only thing Sara didn't mention when you said there's no magic bullet, I just thought of hydration. I used to be chronically dehydrated. Hydration is so important. If you can drink half of your body weight in ounces of water per day, specifically water, that can make such a difference in your health. And then diet.
Do you do electrolytes? Or do you just
I take a mineral supplement? I just drink water, just reverse osmosis water we've got a filter just right on our kitchen sink. But I have to be very deliberate about it because I think for years I was dehydrated. So
how did you determine that you were dehydrated, Lizzie?
Just when I was younger and raising kids and busy and stressed, like my skin was always dry. My hair was dry and brittle in my 30s. Like, when I first got sick, I didn't bring up that symptom. My hair was actually falling out when my hormones were out of balance. So I think, and then doctors were telling me that, hey, you're dehydrated. I mean, I think it's something, again, the right doctor is going to ask about all of that.
And you can see that on blood work. You can see numbers that are elevated, that they're just not diluted enough because there's not enough water. And then by the time that you're thirsty, it's too late. So it needs to be kind of a constant. You can't make up for it and drink, 16 ounces at one time. It's better if you're drinking it constantly throughout the day to replenish. But
Lizzie, can you tell us what
Yeah.
we can do to
Yeah.
help protect compounded drugs for all.
Absolutely. First of all, I just have to give short background on what's happening with compounded hormones right now. So a couple of years ago, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, asked a sort of quasi-governmental group called NASEM. It's the National Academies for Science, Engineering, and Medicine, to do a study on the clinical utility of compounded hormones. We feel pretty strongly that this was a group of academic people, pharma people, people not knowledgeable in the space who did the study. And we feel like they ignored a lot of the research, unless it was double-blind placebo, like the way a pharma study's done, which when you're dealing with individual patients, studies are done differently. So Sara referred in the middle or the beginning of the podcast to a paper that was published, and it was a meta-analysis of all the science and research put together on compounded hormones. And that was recently published in NAMS, which is the Association for Menopause Society, or National American Menopause Society journal, which is a very traditional journal, typically would not be maybe pro compounding, if you will, but it was such a thorough, wonderful analysis that they published this. And we had that published because the outcome of this NASEM report, which was a 300-page outcome, and essentially it went to the FDA, and the FDA is going to use that outcome or that research to develop regulations and how they will regulate hormone therapy moving forward. But the first two recommendations are very detrimental to the future of us as patients. The first recommendation talks about the government inserting itself into the doctor-patient relationship and really telling the doctor, we don't want you to prescribe compounds. If you do, you need to medically document why. If you do, we want you to start with an FDA-approved finished drug product rather than like starting with the recipe and the pure ingredients. It's like you have to bake a cake by starting with a cake instead of baking a cake with flour, sugar, water type situation. So that's not good for patients. And then all the things Sara talked about, all the different hormones, all these dosage forms, etc. Recommendation number 2 says those should be put on a difficult to compound, do not compound list, potentially making them unlawful in the United States. So someone like me and someone like you, Jamie, it's like, are we going to go to Mexico, Canada? Where are we going to go to get our medication if this were to happen? This is very, very concerning. It affects men's and women's health, but it really is primarily a women's health issue. So what people can do, if any of your listeners are currently on compounded hormones and they have a story like mine or like yours, they can go to our trade association's website,
the PCAA, which we'll link to.
Well, trade association is Alliance for Pharmacy Compounding. This is the industry trade association. So it's APC is the acronym, but they have a site we're going to link to called compounding.com. And right when you go to that site, there's a button that says tell your story, and you can just type in. And I mean, I would HIPAA protect yourself, put your first name or your initial. It's not so important who you are. What's important is your story and what was going on, why you needed the hormones, how it made a difference, and how you feel like, for me, I feel like I am fully functioning and have my life back. And I can't imagine life without this. So that's my story.
So when you write, if all of us who write these letters,
it'll be sent to your lawmakers.
They will all be sent. Okay, to our lawmaker, and ours will go to Gary Palmer because he's okay. So that is a state, like
it's
your
a federal
representative.
Yeah, it's our federal congressmen and senators.
Right, but the district, the
district, the congressional district that you live in. So it would go to your congressman and your 2 senators. So for us, it would go to Gary Palmer, Senator Tuberville, Senator Shelby.
Okay, now that is great to know that the Alliance makes sure they will see that, and I'm sure they already are aware of it. They're working with the Alliance. Or I assume our representatives are. Are you finding that they are friendly toward that, or?
It's really interesting, and we have these talks. So I think, well, first of all, I think a lot of people in government, maybe patients as well. I mean, we don't know that, but sometimes the advocates, they've had a firsthand experience with compounding, whether it's hormones or not. Sometimes they just understand where it fits in healthcare and they advocate. Some lawmakers are very supportive and understand and want to really kind of work with the FDA to say, whatever you do, you've got to take a patient-centric approach. This is an important part of healthcare and we cannot take it away. Then there are other lawmakers who may not be supportive, right? Because there's a box, we don't fit in the FDA's box or pharma's box, right? There's a box called standard of care. And I think we believe, and I mean, I shouldn't speak for Sara, but I believe both have a space. Like in my own healthcare, I mean, I may need an FDA approved product sometimes for whatever illness or what have you that I'm dealing with. And so we believe there's a space for both, standard of care medicine and then compounded therapy as well. So it just depends. There are those lawmakers that may see it the opposite way. That's why each one of us who has a story, we also represent a vote. And it's important that our lawmakers hear what's important to us, because if we are not at the table advocating, you put it in our CEO's words, we are on the menu and we could be regulated, out of business. Which the bigger issue for me is, as a patient, as an individual woman who cares about my health and want to, or maintain optimal health and age well, the thought of not having my medicine really scares me.
When is this coming up with the NASEM, the FDA? What's the timeline?
That's a great question, because these issues tend to have a really long life cycle. They tend to have like up to a 7 to 9 year life cycle. We're going into year 3 of this issue. What we know is what the FDA puts in writing and what we hear sort of through the grapevine in Washington. I mean, we hear that they want to take action on this report in the coming couple of years. We just don't know how or what that looks like or when. So that's why we're making sure, want to get in front of the issue, have the lawmakers know this is on the table. We're at the table. We want our medicine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that is so important. So I do encourage anyone who has a compounding story, share it. It's super easy. The link will be in the show notes and it'll just take a few minutes and it could
literally
make a difference. But okay, I'm so grateful to both of you. I've learned so much and I know everyone will learn from this. And I hope that you all will come back and do another episode because there's so much more that I feel like I didn't get to ask you.
Oh, I would be back.
Yeah, I'd be honored. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was really fun. Jamie, it was, kismet, meant to be that Zane brought us together. He shared your case study of your business and Family Savvy. And I was like, the minute there was a break, I just went up to him and introduced myself. And I said, you've got to introduce me to Jamie. Just good things will happen.
Well, one thing I love about what I do, I'm not savvy, but I connect my followers with savvy people. I may be savvy with the food or a few things, but what I love is connecting anyone who might follow me with people who know a lot and have valuable information that could be life-changing. And that y'all definitely fit into that category. And if you're not 50 yet, just wait. It thinks, you may think compounding drugs will never apply to you, but you just wait. Life's good, but it can, it can get dicey when all that hormone stuff starts. But anyway, thank you both so much. And to all of you watching and listening, I appreciate you. And until the next episode, you have a great rest of your day. And thanks, ladies.